שיבולת בשדה קוראה ברוח מאומץ גרעיני גירה ובמרחב הריב יום כבר יפוח השמש כתם וזהב
My talk is about spatial and temporal aspects of evolution of languages over the Twitter. Why did we choose Twitter for this study? Well, there are two reasons. First reason is that we have a lot of data on Twitter. And that's simply because Twitter makes this data available, makes available the messages sent over Twitter for free download. The second reason is that languages evolve faster over Twitter than elsewhere. And the reason is perhaps that people have to be more creative anyhow, because messages are much shorter in Twitter. They are constrained to around 140 characters. What is it that drives the evolution of a language? There have been some recent game theoretical approaches to answer these questions. And these approaches, using evolutionary game theory, show that the evolution can be explained through some kind of optimization process that is going on, in which one optimizes the amount of information conveyed through words and their simplicity as well. Today I will describe yet another aspect of the evolution of languages. The language is part of the identity of the community that speaks it. Thus, transformation in a language can serve a community in displaying transformation in its identity. The music that started this talk is an Israeli song about wheat, in Hebrew, shibolet. This word served as kind of password in the early biblical period, more than 3,000 years ago. The pronunciation of this word varied from one tribe to another, and it was therefore used as a way to reveal the identity of people who were asked to pronounce this word. This suggests that when making models for the evolution of languages, one indeed has to take into account the potential usefulness of displaying the identity of different communities that speak the languages. I'll be presenting today several examples in which we observe transformation that occur in the spelling of words in Twitter, and especially cases in which the transformations are different from one community to another depending on their geographical location. To do that, we need to be able to distinguish between locations of different words or different messages. We can do that using some location tags that are available on Twitter. The problem is that only 10% of the messages reveal this information. So how else can we determine the location? We propose a method based on a daily periodogram. It is based on the idea that people have a daily cycle in which they tend to sleep at night and to be more active during daytime. So suppose now that we wish to locate some expression, that is, to determine from what area do we get tweets that use this expression. So what we do, we write a periodogram, a curve, that represents the frequency of the tweets that have the desired word in them as a function of the time of the day. This is what we call the periodogram. This periodogram will have at each 24 hours a cyclic behavior with some minimum and maximum. Now the minimum corresponds to the night and the maximum to the daytime. Now suppose that in this periodogram the minimum occurs X hours later than in some region that is located in point Y. This means that there is a difference in time zones of X hours between the minimum there and the minimum here. If a given expression is used only in one place in the world, then the localization should be pretty accurate. We'll see pretty clear zones of minimum, of complete inactivity, and other zones of maximum of high activity. Now, what if a word is used in many places around the world? In that case, there will not be much difference between the minimum and the maximum activity. This difference between the minimum and the maximum activity gives us an idea of what I call the quality of the localization. If the ratio between the maximum and the minimum is large, then we say that we have a high quality of localization. Otherwise, it's a low quality localization. And what you see here are some examples of bad localization in the upper part of the figure, and in the red down, it's an example of a good localization. Slide 10 provides yet another example. We see in the upper part there are a region in which the activity really reaches zero at some time of the day. Whereas in the curve down, in the figure below, we see that we never get to a zero activity. So this means that the periodogram that we get here is some kind of combination of many periodograms, that each one of which could be quite well localized, could have a clear minimum at zero activity and so on. But their combination give us something that is not well localized. We next observe the quality of localization of the word "and." In slide 11, the topmost figure corresponds to the periodogram of "and." As we see, we have very bad localization in the sense that the difference between the max and the minimum activity there is very small. The next slide gives us, in fact, the map of the world with the amount of tweets we get with the words "and" in them. And we see indeed a very non-localized spread out of the word "and." This confirmed what we saw in the previous slide. The periodograms show that languages that share the same time zone have similar periodograms. Also, what we see in slide 14 is that different words in German have similar periodograms because they are spoken in the same area. The next slide, slide 15, shows two periodograms. Both of the words realize, one in the English spelling and one in the American spelling, one with Z and one with S. We see that the minimum of the blue periodogram coincides with the maximum of the red one. So it is obvious that these are taken at different time zones. And indeed, one of them characterizes the United Kingdom and one characterizes the United States. We see that the red curve has its minima at around 1 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. So this should correspond to United Kingdom. The blue curve has its minimum at around 11 o'clock in the morning. So that should correspond to the United States. We go directly to the evolution of the word "because." It has many different spellings on Twitter, and some of these we can find also on other social media, but much less frequent. Some of these spelling will characterize the United Kingdom and some the United States. In slide 17, we compare two such spellings of "because." The first is COS and the second is CUZ. As we see from the activity periodograms, again, the maximum activity of the red curve coincides with the minimum activity of the blue curve. So they are obviously used in different locations. One in the United Kingdom and one in the United States. Again, observing exactly where the minima are, we can conclude that the red one, corresponding to COS, is the one used in the United Kingdom, whereas CUZ is the one used in the United States. So why is CUZ the one used in the United States and COS the one in Great Britain? Well, this is where we see that the change in spelling allows the different communities to display their identity. In this case, their accent. CUZ is the way you would pronounce because in the United States, cuz, whereas COS is the way you would pronounce it in Great Britain, cause. So we are able to hear the accent of the speaker through the spelling that he chooses. This is precisely the way to display one's identity through the language. What about Spanish? Because or why are pronounced in Spanish porque. Interestingly, they are written frequently on Twitter as XK or XQ or PORQ, and there are other spelling as well. How does one come to XK, you would ask? Well, it's a two-step transformation. The first one is an auditive, the second one is a visual. The auditive transformation is where we use multiply as an alternative meaning for the word pour. So in the beginning of the word porquer, we hear the syllable pour, and we can interpret as multiply. And the second one is a visual, where we use X as a symbol for multiplication, a visual symbol. And this transforms the porque with POR to XK or XQUE. Slide 20 shows the use of because when it appears twice in a sentence. There is some kind of poetic form of using it. For example, the middle example is laugh at you because you're different. Laugh at them because they're the same. And you see that each one of the different because is written differently. We see that in most of the examples, that when you have twice in the same sentence the word because, in this form, they will appear with different spelling each time. The next table shows how frequent the different variants of because are in Twitter, and compare these to the frequency in other social media. I end with yet another example that illustrates how a change in the spelling allows one to display better its identity. This example is concerned with words that are written in English with TH and are altered in Twitter to D. The TH is turned into Ds. These changes in the spelling are typical for the Afro-American community, and we see that words like this, that, the become this, that, and the. To summarize, we studied here evolution of the language over Twitter. We showed that it occurs at a faster rate than it occurs in other media, and we provided some tools that allow us to track how different areas that use the same language, different geographical areas, have different evolutions.